to save dollars.
Bell Canada, what city, please?
Bell Canada's controversial plan to sell its operator business to a U.S. company. Wire warning. The Swissair accident prompts an order for an urgent inspection of these airliners. And coming home.
I miss him a lot, and I can't wait to see him.
A Canadian held hostage in Colombia gets set for an emotional reunion.
And on the magazine, the hostage hero.
I was totally isolated from any communications.
He's the Canadian businessman held captive by Colombian guerrillas. Now he's free and heading home. An interview with Norbert Reinhardt.
The National with Hannah Gardner and Peter Mansbridge.
Good evening. A major announcement from Bell Canada today, a major sellout as far as some of its own workers are concerned. The announcement involves a deal to sell Bell's operator assistance business to a U.S. company. The deal is expected to close by the end of March. And as Susan Bonner tells us, the operators are crying foul.
If you decide to go to the new company...
For 30 years, Nancy Headley has worked the phones as a Bell telephone operator. Now she's working the phones in anger, talking to colleagues about news that Bell is bouncing 2,400 operator jobs to an American company that could pay a lot less.
You feel like you're just a number, and it's certainly not like the old days, and I guess things do change, but it hasn't been a happy change for anybody.
In Montreal, Bell defended the decision, saying the old style of operator assistance was too expensive, and selling the service allows operators to keep their jobs with the new company.
Doing nothing is not a very good plan, because doing nothing means less growth. Doing this plan means that we can hopefully maintain the same level of employment.
Bell says its $900 million in profit last year can't cushion it from a fiercely competitive phone industry. The company needs to change. The union sees another motive.
This is vengeance.
The union says Bell is trying to thwart a bid to gain pay equity. A recent court ruling increased the likelihood that Bell could be forced to pay out millions of dollars to female workers who weren't paid as much as men.
And when they lost their appeal to the Federal Court of Appeal, they decided not only will we not give people a pay equity adjustment, we'll take away their job. Or at the very least, we'll cut their pay significantly.
It is not clear how much operators will make in their new jobs. The American company reportedly pays between $10 and $12 an hour, while Bell pays about $19.
The business is changing.
This industry analyst sees Bell's decision as good business.
So there's a shift in their business focus. Historically, the operators were a big part of their business, and that is no longer the case.
In the end, the dispute between Bell and its union comes down to how to handle wrenching change. There was a time when operators were at the very heart of Bell Telephone's business. The union says that should count for more than a quick sell-off. Bell Telephone says it's just trying to stay competitive and keep as many jobs as possible. Susan Bonner, CBC News, Toronto.
CBC News has learned that the United States issued a stern warning to Canada today. Back off on a proposed law that would discriminate against U.S. magazines published in Canada or risk retaliation against a wide range of Canadian goods sold in the U.S. Everything from steel to plastics to lumber. The legislation affecting so-called split-run magazines is expected to face a vote in the House of Commons next month. There are new concerns tonight about the wiring in MD-11 aircraft. The same kind of plane crashed off Peggy's Cove last September, killing everyone on board. The safety alert follows discoveries by the people investigating the Swissair disaster. Laurie Graham reports.
This is an MD-11. One just like it crashed in the Atlantic almost 4.5 months ago. And it's the area above and behind the co-pilot here on the right that investigators with Canada's Transportation Safety Board are worried about. They checked the cockpits of about a dozen MD-11s and found problems with the wiring. Some wires were chafed and cracked. Coated wires were broken. There were inconsistencies in the routing of wires, and they found loose wire connections. As a result of these findings, investigators in both Canada and the United States have sounded the alarm and called for this.
An inspection of all MD-11 airplanes for discrepancies in and around the cockpit overhead circuit breaker panel and the avionics circuit breaker panel.
Since the crash of Swiss Air Flight 111, 85% of the plane has been recovered, including wires that were broken or melted because of electrical arcing, a phenomenon that could have produced temperatures as high as 5,000 degrees.
We're trying to establish what temperatures were reached by the wire and by the structure, so that hopefully that will help us zero in on the origin and certainly on the hottest areas and why they reached those temperatures.
But until they have those answers, investigators refuse to draw any conclusions.
That the Transportation Safety Board investigation team has not established a direct relationship between these wiring discrepancies that were found in in-service MD-11s that we inspected and the damaged wire from the Swiss Air 111 aircraft.
There are about 170 MD-11s in service, though there are none flying with any of Canada's airlines. So it's up to the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration to order the inspections. So far, there's no word on when that order will come. Lori Graham, CBC News, Halifax.
A Canadian businessman hailed as a hero is homeward bound tonight, Norbert Reinhardt, who made headlines for an extraordinary act, offering himself as a hostage to Colombian rebels so one of his employees could go free. Today, our cameras caught up with both Reinhardt and some of his anxious admirers. Raj Ahluwalia has the story.
They're not really sure what they're doing, but Robin and Molly Reinhardt have a good idea why they're doing it.
What are we doing? We're decorating the house so that we can have a party when we get back, okay?
A party to welcome home their father. Norbert Reinhardt lands in Toronto tomorrow morning.
It's going to be just so good to have them come running to meet me at the airport, as I know they will.
Tonight, Reinhardt is in Mexico. 6 months ago, he left his family to fly to Colombia, a country gripped by civil war. The goal, to try to free one of his employees who was being held hostage by a guerrilla organization, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. They both worked for a mining company. Reinhardt exchanged places with him and was held captive for 94 days.
I thought that was the fastest way of resolving the situation. And we had been 3 months. You got to understand, we had been down there 3 months. Some of these things I understand, you know, people that know about Colombia, go on for years.
Kidnapping foreign business people for ransom is common in Colombia. There were 800 last year.
It's a risk of doing business in Colombia, and any risk certainly adds cost. And it's a risk you can't ignore.
Reinhardt won't say how much was paid to secure his release, neither will the Canadian government. Officials were working through diplomatic channels to try to get Reinhardt freed without paying a ransom.
Well, it's not something that we officially support because otherwise it becomes too much of a business that the groups start taking hostages and kidnapping simply for the purposes of raising money, and it's a practice we want to discourage.
Reinhardt says he never thought his life was in danger, never thought he wouldn't be released. He says few people kidnapped in Colombia are ever harmed. His wife Casey says she was never worried either.
My biggest fear was probably that he might try to escape and get himself into trouble that way.
But that's all behind them now. Tonight the roses are ready, the ribbons tied. Everything's set for an emotional reunion tomorrow when the Reinhardt family will be together for the first time in 6 months. Raj Ahluwalia, CBC News, Toronto.
And the full interview with Reinhardt will be seen later on the magazine. Bill Clinton formally denied the impeachment charges against him today, one of perjury, the other obstruction of justice. In a written statement, the U.S. president said the charges do not meet the constitutional standard necessary to remove him from office. While acknowledging improper conduct in the Monica Lewinsky affair, Clinton said the allegations do not rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Opening arguments in his Senate trial could begin on Thursday. A number of developments in the scandal rocking the International Olympic Committee. It started with revelations that organizers involved in Salt Lake City's winning bid for the 2002 Winter Games paid what amounted to bribes to IOC members. Now, one senior IOC official is saying the Games may have to be moved to another city, perhaps to Calgary. And Quebec City is talking about suing it lost out to Salt Lake City in the fight to host the 2002 Games. Still ahead in tonight's news. The Manitoba vote-splitting scandal widens, and
too bad I have to work. I would have gone to have my second lesson of snowboarding.
Jean Chrétien, senior citizen.
And later on the magazine, Kimberly Glasgow, a prima ballerina of the old school. Maybe too old. After 18 years with the National Ballet, the dancer was sent twirling out the door.
I feel this has just been very cruel and very cold and extremely insensitive.
The making of art is politically incorrect.
The gloves are off. Brawl at the ballet.
A bombshell today at the inquiry into Manitoba's last provincial election. As Red Sharon reports, today's dramatic testimony came from Premier Gary Filmon's former chief of staff.
By all accounts, Taras Sokolic was the Premier's right-hand man. He was Gary Filmon's chief of staff and the man who ran his 1995 election campaign.
I, of course, explained to him that we had to use discretion with this.
He was also, by his own admission today, the man who tried to split the vote by funding independent candidates and by getting big-name Conservatives to help him. Going into the 1995 provincial election, the Conservatives were just ahead of the New Democrats. The idea was to fund independent candidates in key ridings in an attempt to draw votes away from the NDP. Sokolic testified he approached two prominent Tories, members of Gary Filmon's inner circle. One of them, Arnie Thorstenson, is the current chair of the PC Manitoba Fund and long-time Mulrooney fundraiser. The other was Bob Kosminski, former co-chair of the same fund with links to both federal and provincial Tories.
A day or two later, Mr. Thorstenson was in the campaign headquarters, gave me an envelope with a number of checks.
Sokolic says the checks were made out in amounts small enough to be unreportable under campaign regulations. The commission chairman seemed almost to find it hard to believe what he was hearing.
Do I understand this right? You were helping to get personal donations for people who were not of the Conservative Party?
That's correct.
Go ahead.
Columnist Francis Russell has been covering Manitoba politics for the better part of 30 years.
Well, I think this is a very serious step that's now been taken before the inquiry. We now have the entire inner circle of the Filmon government implicated in one way, fashion, or form in what really amounts to an attempt to buy the 1995 provincial election.
And while she says that doesn't mean the Premier was lying when he testified he knew nothing of the scheme, the leader of the opposition wasn't being as charitable.
How can anybody have all his senior staff and all his friends that raise money and not know about it?
But that's what Premier Gary Filmon continues to maintain, that he felt as shocked and betrayed as anybody about what happened. And the latest polling shows this scandal doesn't seem to have affected the public's impression of the Premier. The question is whether that impression can hold up under another possible 6 weeks of testimony. Red Sharon, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Mortgage rates are going up at the big banks by as much as 1/3 of a percentage point. A 5-year closed mortgage, for example, goes from 6.6 to 6.9%. A 1-year close goes from 6.2 to 6.4%. The banks borrow much of their money in the bond market, and it's been costing them more to do that lately. The Prime Minister joined millions of other Canadians today. He became a senior citizen. Jean Chrétien turned 65, and he showed just how young he feels. He joked with reporters, and then he raced up the stairs to his office in Parliament. Julie Van Dusen was there to watch a man in motion celebrate a big milestone.
Prime Minister Jean Chrétien has now joined the ranks of Canada's seniors, but he's not showing his age in the least.
Great. Too bad I have to work. I would have gone to have my second lesson of snowboarding today.
Chrétien's stamina is legendary, ever since he first appeared on the political scene in 1963 as a wiry 29-year-old. 36 years later, he's still as agile, whether cycling ahead of security in China
Right on you, hook me.
or paddling in Singapore. Compared to other world leaders, even the younger ones, he looks impressively fit. Chrétien's game for just about anything: skateboarding, so doing, and yesterday his first lesson on a snowboard.
I stood on the snowboard, went down very, very slowly, I have to admit, but I managed to survive the day.
He's mastered the art of survival in politics, too, through 8 portfolios and now as Prime Minister of 2 majority governments. And he remains on top of the public opinion polls. But it's anyone's guess if he'll stick around for another term, says his biographer, Lawrence Martin.
He's got a very large ego, and you're in the #1 job. You're enjoying it. The people of Canada seem to be supporting you in what you're doing. Why wouldn't you want to stick around?
But then again...
You know, he's not a guy who has this grand vision of the country that he wants to implement. So you tend to wonder why he would want to hang around longer.
But Chrétien doesn't want to hear about any talk of retiring, and rhymes off other prime ministers who were older than he is now when they started.
Pearson and Saint-Laurent started at 67.
Instead, he challenges a reporter to a race, and he's often running, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Chrétien says he won't get the old age pension right now because he makes too much money as Prime Minister, a job he shows absolutely no sign of giving up anytime soon.
An idea how you feel today?
Oh, great. The weather is perfect.
No, but how do you feel? Any difference?
No, not a difference at all.
You're not aging at all?
No.
Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Bank robberies don't usually make the national news. There are hundreds every year in Canada. But a bank teller was killed in one today. Nancy Kidd worked at a Toronto Dominion branch in Brampton, Ontario. She was 44. And according to the Canadian Bankers Association, she was only the 2nd bank employee to be killed in Canada in the last 100 years. One of the most accomplished novelists of this century has died. Brian Moore, an Irish-born Canadian citizen who twice won the Governor-General's Award for fiction. Adrian Arsenault looks at his life and legacy.
In a home high on a Malibu, California cliff, a man born in Ireland spent decades pounding on his typewriter, earning a solid reputation as one of Canada's great writers.
Where Pottinger's Canadian supporters had begun to applaud.
Brian Moore, novelist of an eclectic citizenship trail and an eclectic roster of books, 19 in all, historical, comical, experimental, popular. 7 of his novels became movies, including The Black Robe and The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn.
I just don't feel God is there anymore.
Moore's fans say he wrote the kinds of stories that were easy to read, not over-intellectualized. Even the critics loved them. He twice won the Governor-General's Award for fiction and got 3 Booker nominations.
He was as versatile as any writer alive. He could move from one genre to another and from one subject to another, and you had no idea, when you'd finished the first 15 Brian Moore books, you had no idea what the 16th would be about.
Fulford's library is peppered with Moore's books. He's read them all, some twice, and says that when Moore died last night, he and Canada lost a friend. A man whose first job here was as a proofreader with the Montreal Gazette in 1948. When a colleague wrote a bad book, got it published, Moore figured he could do better. The novelist was born. His hard days in Montreal became fodder for the book and the movie, The Luck of Ginger Coffee.
When you worked in the Irish Times, did you ever hear about somebody with her name of, what's her name? Coffee, about 2 years ago.
Whatever happened to him in Canada, the good and the bad, remained in his soul and his writings.
A memory of being poor.
From Canada.
It's because I was broke when I went to Canada. I worked as a proofreader. I'd never been so hard up in my life.
Still in a decade here, Moore built enduring relationships, guarded them with his privacy to the end. When he died last night of lung disease, few even knew he'd been ill. Adrian Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.
Next in tonight's news. Father Pops, the man who's taking some of the mean out of Montreal streets.
It needed to be done. I was the person who should do it.
And on the magazine, he was a hostage by choice.
I didn't see any other alternative.
But now, he has been released by his Colombian captors. The first television interview with Norbert Reinhardt. When the National continues.
His name is Father Emmett Johns, but to street kids in Montreal, he's just plain old Pops. For 10 years now, he's been there for them, always with a hot meal and a helping hand. And as Lynn Robson found out, it's making a difference.
He's a 71-year-old man with a mission. Father Emmett Johns is a Catholic priest. His parish, the mean streets of Montreal.
The streets are terrible and it's terribly dangerous.
The members of his congregation, dropouts, punks and junkies, the kids no one else seems to want.
I got this idea that it needed to be done, and that I got a feeling that I was the person who should do it.
5 nights a week, Pop's van roams the streets, handing out hot dogs and friendship. He's been doing it for 10 years. He's our father, better than my own father, says Eric Leblanc. Pops was there when Leblanc was evicted by his landlord. And he was there for Marie-Soleil Dufresne when she was pregnant and living on the street. Now she's in school and taking care of her son. You can have confidence in Pop, says Dufresne. He listens like a friend. Of course, he does more than listen. Pops has become the best resource available to street kids in Montreal. There's the van, where it all began, and Center, one of Pop's dreams come true. Here, 250 kids hang out every day. Kids like Yanni, a runaway from a small town. She got here 3 months ago. No money, nowhere to live. Then she found Pops.
For me, it's really like God, because if he would not have been there, I would have died from hungry and cold and scared.
10 years ago, it was just an experiment. Now, Pops is an institution, a hero to those who call the street home. But being a hero gets harder as the years pass, and it's only 11 p.m., 4 more hours to go in this day. Pops is tired, but he says you don't just quit a job like this.
But I think that I probably hang into it in one way or another until the bugle blows.
And if the street kids of Montreal are very lucky, the bugle will not blow for a very long time. Lynn Robson, CBC News, Montreal.
Now here's Hannah Gartner with our magazine.
Hello. To many people, he is Employer of the Month. His name is Norbert Reinhardt. Last October, the Canadian mining contractor did something really extraordinary. He became a hostage by choice, trading places with an employee being held by rebels in Colombia. Now, Norbert Reinhardt is free, and he's heading home to Canada. He joins us tonight from Mexico City. Mr. Reinhardt, I don't know really what I was expecting, but you certainly don't look like a man who was held hostage for 94 days in the middle of nowhere, Colombia.
Well, I thought I looked like I had been somewhere for 94 days. I thought I looked a little bit ragged, but I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what the situation was like.
Well, we've watched too many movies?
Maybe.
So what was it like?
Well, it was, it wasn't that unlike going out camping in some ways, you know. But the conditions were relatively good given the circumstances. It wasn't uncomfortable, and it wasn't oppressive in any physical sense.
But you were held there against your will. That in itself had to be very oppressive by people who are known to kill people. They have killed hostages in the past. Weren't you petrified?
They've killed hostages in the past, but I believe the figure is something like less than 2% that ever have any harm come to them in that situation. And to have that 2%, probably something has gone wrong that was avoidable. Yeah.
If it wasn't that horrible and that oppressive, and if it was like camping, why did you try to escape?
Well, you understand there's certainly a horrible violation of your freedom. Okay, so I didn't try to escape out of escaping oppression. It was more to get back with my life and get the situation resolved.
Tell me, how did you try to escape?
No, I've explained before, trying to escape is maybe overstating the matter. It was more a testing of the waters, okay? I left my designated area in the hours of darkness to see how quick they were to pick things up, okay?
Did they shoot? Did they get
No, they didn't shoot. They said, they didn't use my name, but they said, what? What are you doing? And I said, well, I've got to urinate.
Did you?
And so we did, and so I did later. But no, an escape attempt is probably, maybe it's far too strong a word for that, I would say.
Did you know what was going on behind the scenes, what the negotiation process was like, the fact that they wanted 2.5 million US, they dropped it down to $500,000, and then in the end it was 70,000 US?
I was totally isolated from any communications. I had no idea of any of that. I had newspapers available to me once a week, every 10 days.
So explain to me when you did find out that it was over and you were getting out of there.
Explain to you what it was like?
Yeah, well, what happened? Did the chief gorilla say, okay, Norbert, you're out of here?
Yeah, you're pretty close to it. They have a standard radio call every morning at 8 o'clock. During that call, the leader of the group, I could tell from his tone of voice and who's the voice on the other end that something was in the works, but I had no idea what, whether it concerned me or concerned other things, but I knew there was a change that day, whether it was a move of the camp or something. And he got off the radio, came direct to my tent, and he said, you can get your things ready, we're going. And I said, going where? And he said, Acasa, going home. And that felt really, really good. And so I said, well, this isn't going to take me too long to pack. That was about 8:15, 9 o'clock. We had instant coffee, and at 9:15 we were on the way down the mountain waiting for the good delegation to pick me up.
Now, when you decided to change places with your employee, Ed Leonard, did you know what you were going to face?
I had a real good idea, yeah. I didn't know how long it would be. But I had a pretty good idea of what it was, and that's one of the reasons for doing it. I figured that a month for me in there would probably be no worse than the next day or so of Ed's capture, who was in there for 105 days and went in so much less prepared than I did. So that was a factor as well. But there's also the other factor that I didn't see any other alternative.
How would you describe your relationship with your captors?
Well, I tried to let them know in no uncertain terms that I wasn't feeling that their actions deprived me of my human rights and kidnapping me and putting me in danger, et cetera, et cetera. And the other things that their group does of aggressive nature against civilian targets.
Are you sympathetic to their cause?
Am I sympathetic to their cause? Colombia and the whole situation in the country, there is needed a lot of social change, and that is one of the points that they're trying to bring out. Whether I agree with their directions of social change or not is a whole other question. But
did you know them as individual people before you volunteered to take the place of your employee? And
I didn't know any one of them at all before I decided to make that change.
Because I'm wondering, is this just the price of doing business in a place like Colombia, where kidnapping is like an industry? These people kidnap 800 folks a year.
You're absolutely right. They use the phrase all the time, the industry of kidnapping. It's been somewhat ingrained in Colombian society over the last 30, 40 years. This isn't something that's come up later, and it's certainly something that you're vulnerable to if you're going to do business in Colombia. It doesn't mean that a lot of people don't do business in Colombia, and that that business in Colombia can't be done in a way that is relatively safe.
Well, so what does it take to do business in Colombia? Do you not only have to get to know the officials in government, but you also have to ingratiate yourself with the officials in the guerrilla movement?
I'll tell you what it's like doing business in Colombia. There's a Colombian saying: you've got to have feet of lead, and you've got to have the agility of a cat. That's what doing business in Colombia is like. But other than that, let's just leave it at that.
We were reading reports that an official in the Colombian government suggested that you weren't the hero that the Canadian press was making you out, but really an opportunist because you made a deal, he suggested, with the guerrillas so you would get control of that mine.
Yeah, I've heard some of the stories along that line. I really want to get the details on this. I know there's information exists on it. There's one thing I want to state. There's so much misinformation at this point.
Yeah.
That some of these things, it's just real premature for me to give an answer on.
So you're going back? You're going to go back to drill?
Okay, about that, right now my priority is my family and my girls. I'm going to spend a lot of time with them. But I expect as well that somewhere in the future I'll be going back. I have to go back. I have things there that have to be done if the circumstances are right.
Norbert Reinhardt, have a good trip, safe trip home.
Yeah, okay, Hannah. Nice talking to you. We'll talk to you again one day, I'm sure.
Thank you.